Hello, today I'm going to be doing my best and worst videos of 2017. Let's get into it. Okay, so starting off with the best books. The first two I'm going to show you are classics that I really like. I never really thought I actually read that many classics until I was looking at what books I enjoyed this year, and almost every single one was sort of classic. One of them's a modern classic and two of them are like proper classics. And then only one of them, I would say it's going to become a classic. So yeah, I didn't think I read that much of I thought I just read YA, but apparently I don't, because going through I was like, oh, that one was my favourite, and everything that was YA or something else was usually a reread, which actually I'm excited for, because I thought that I didn't read very diversely. It's not really diversely, but I thought I stuck to YA and didn't go outside of it, but apparently I don't, so yay! Okay, so the first two I'm going to show you are the classic. So the first one I read was Jane Eyre. This is the first book I read this year. I actually read it last year as well. I was reading it at the end of last year and expected to finish it by this year, but before this year started, but I didn't. I only got halfway through, so I'm putting it in as this year because it basically is. But what I really loved about this book was the feminist dialogue. So if you looked at it in today's standards, in a modern context, everything that goes on would be sexist and her opinions would be sexist, but for the time, she is a very revolutionary woman. She's living on her own. She's very downtrodden, but she sort of keeps her own. She fights the man that she's talking to. She's employed by. She doesn't sit there and go yes, yes, yes. She engages in fights with him. She says, this is right, this is wrong, this is what I feel, and it just got me. There were so many bits I can't think of any right now, but there were so many moments that I was just yes, yes. This is the first book I've read that's been quite of a hearty classic, quite dense. So I've sort of read The Animal Farm, Great Gatsby, Great Expectations, Pride and Prejudice, sort of the light fluffy ones. Well, they're not really light and fluffy, but you know what I mean, they're easier to get through because of the writing style, but this one's slightly more difficult and I managed to get through it, but with the same sort of not feeling like I was slogging through a book. I managed to read it wow, this is happening, wow, this is happening, oh, I can't wait to pick up my book again. But interesting fact, I'm currently reading Tenant of Wildfowl Hall, and that is beating this. So that might be, drop my paper, that might be on the next list for next year. I don't know if I'm going to finish it this year or next year, so it could just be a book that doesn't end up anywhere, but YOLO. Okay, so the second book I'm going to show you is The Picture of Dorian Gray. This book basically talks about vanity, and it's about a guy who doesn't realise how beautiful he is and how sort of innocent he looks. And this painter becomes obsessed with him and he's like, I'm gonna paint your portrait. And so he paints the portrait, and then this guy comes along. Okay, yes, there would be a day when his face would be wrinkled and wizen, and his eyes dim and colourless, the grace of his figure broken and deformed, the scarlet would pass away from his lips and the gold steal from his hair. The life that was to make his soul would mar his body, and would become dreadful, hideous and uncouth. As he thought of it, a sharp pang of pain struck through him like a knife, and made each delicate fibre of his nature quiver. His eyes deepened into the amethyst, and across them came a mist of tears. He felt as if a hand of ice had been laid upon his heart. Don't you like it? Cried Holwood at last, stung by the little lad's silence, not understanding what it meant. Of course he likes it, said Lord Henry. Who wouldn't like it? It's one of the greatest things in modern art. I will give you anything you like to ask for it, but I will give you anything you like to ask for it. I must have it. It is not my property, Harry. Whose property is it? Dorian's, of course, answered the pater. He is a very lucky fellow. How sad it is, murmured Dorian Gray his eyes still fixed upon his own portrait. How sad it is that I shall grow old and horrible and dreadful, but this picture will remain always young. It will never be older than this particular day of June. And if it were any other way, if it were I who was to always be young, and the picture that was to grow old, for that I would give everything. Yes, there is nothing in the whole world I would not give. I would give my soul for that. You would hardly... yeah. Do you get it? It's interesting, and it's a very interesting exploration of stuff. I think also that's the only book that Oscar Wilde wrote. He wrote a lot of plays like The Importance of Being Earnest, but I think that's the only book. Don't quote me on that, I'm not entirely sure, but I'm pretty sure it's the only book. The next book is a really quick read. There's also a movie with Kate Winslet in it, if you want to watch that instead of reading the book, and I think both of the mediums sort of give you all that there is to see. You can either read the book or watch the movie, so not much difference because it's a very well made movie. But the next book is The Reader by Bernhard Schlink. I can't do German. My sister was reading this, I think it was in her German literature class, and she was like, you should read it, and so I did. And it's really, really good. It's about the intergenerational relationships between, so the children growing up after World War II in Germany. So knowing what their parents had done and sort of like having to live with that without talking about it, and the sort of power balance, and the main character is like this boy who falls in love with a woman who was a, I don't know if that's a spoiler. Basically he falls in love with a woman, and stuff to do with World War II happens. And he finds out stuff about her, and I don't know how to put it without spoiling it. Okay, I can't actually put this in words because I'm dumb without spoiling it, so I'm just gonna go to my lovely back of the book because I can't come up with a way to say it. The Reader is a compelling meditation on the connections between Germany's past and its present. Dramatised with extreme emotional intelligence is the story of a relationship between the narrator and an older woman. It has won deserved praise across Europe for the tact and power with which it handles material both erotic and philosophical. There we go. I succeeded. Next book, Milk and Honey, everyone's favourite. As you can see, there's lots of little nuts. I feel like this is a very basic favourite book, but I did like it. So this book, if you don't already know, which you probably do, it's broken up into 4 sections. The hurting, the loving, the breaking, and the healing. And so there's poems about, in each section, about different things. It covers very dark stuff, and it's all illustrated by the author. Will you be able to see? So there's stuff like that. Let's go look at the next one. Like that. See? You've probably seen it on places like Tumblr. It's everywhere. I can't think of anything that hasn't been said about this book already, so I'm just going to say it's good, it's poetry. It's a very different style of sort of traditional poetry, so if you're not into sort of the big words and fanciness, but you just like the prose and the way it all gets put together, this is the book for you, because this is the poetry book for you, because it doesn't overcomplicate things with its language, so it's very accessible, and it's very, very, very dark. Very dark. So, big trigger warning on this, but highly recommend it. And she's also come out with a second book this year, The Sun and Her Flowers, which I haven't read yet, which probably I will read next year. So yes, that is all of my best books. Now, I only have 2 bad books this year. They were both atrocious. The first of the terrible, terrible books was I Was Here by Gail Forman. This book made me very, very, very upset because it just handled mental illness in a very insensitive way. It romanticised it. The main character was more focused on a romance than on the fact that she was trying to discover who had talked her best friend into committing suicide. Like, when you deal with something that dark, you do not focus on the romantic side of that because it's not realistic. When someone's had their best friend die, that's in the first page though, so don't worry, it's not a spoiler. When someone's had their friend die from suicide, I don't think they're going to be going, ooh, relationship, like when they're on a mission to find out who killed their friend, essentially. It just pissed me off, okay? And I had so many good expectations because everyone seems to like Gail Forman. So I went into it like, okay, this is going to be really good, and then it just went crashing into a pile of trash. The next book, the final book, is, where is it? The final book, the final of 2017, the final disappointment, is Holding Up the Universe by Jennifer Nevin. Again, this is a book that didn't handle controversial issues well. It did a good job at promoting prosopagnosia. I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's basically a disorder where you can't recognise people's faces, so you can't even recognise your own family members, and this guy is supposed to have the worst case that the doctor who he sees halfway through the novel has ever seen. And then this other girl was the fattest girl in America, and has lost weight and went to school. My biggest problem with this novel is that it mishandled things. It was trying too hard to be controversial. Everything was about controversy, controversy, controversy. I think if this book had been in the hands of someone like John Green, it would have been completely different. Because what John Green and other sort of controversial topics authors understand is that the entire book is not the thing that's going on in their lives. One of the great things about The Fault in Our Stars is that relatable. She goes through sort of down to earth issues. She doesn't go through issues that are just so out there and over the top. That's not what their characters are about. Like, they're not all illness, 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 illness. So if you only make a character their illness, it just makes them one-dimensional. And you don't actually get to understand the full effect on their life because you're only seeing what happens because of you only see the side of the illness. You don't see the normal day-to-day things. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. I'm just rambling, but it makes sense in my head. I wrote a Goodreads review, which I was very proud of. I'll link my Goodreads down below. That basically went over how I felt about this book, but it just pissed me off. Because it had so much potential to do well. It was covering a topic that's probably never been covered in a book before. Hopefully you understand my ramblings on the best and worst books of 2017. Goodbye, adieu, till next year. The next book I'm probably going to upload is a bookshelf tour because I've recently redone my bookshelves. Yay! And I want to chronicle it all before 2017 ends. And I think I'm going to do that every year at the end of the year so that I can see how my bookshelf develops. Because right now it is very small, it's only these two. But I'm going to get another one because there's a big pile of books over there that don't even have a shelf. Yeah. See you in another video, possibly a bookshelf tour. But that takes a lot of work, and all of this week I'm working, so it's probably going to be a beginning of 2018 bookshelf tour. So, yay. Au revoir.